Good morning. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Francisco Lopez-Jimenez to the Neurosurgery Lecture Series today. Dr. Lopez is the chair of the Division of Preventive Cardiology, co-director of Artificial Intelligence in Cardiology, editor-in-chief of the Mayo Clinic Proceedings Journal, co-chair of the Advanced Healthcare Analytics Work Group of the American College of Cardiology, and is a professor of medicine at the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine and Science at the Mayo Clinic Rochester. Today, Dr. Lopez-Jimenez is going to talk about establishing an artificial intelligence research program.
Thank you for the invitation, and this is really a great.
Dr. Lopez-Jimenez obtained his medical degree at the Guanajuato University. He then completed his internal medicine residency at the Instituto Nacional de Ciencias Médicas y Nutrición Salvador Subirán, which is one of the most prestigious public institutions in Mexico. After residency, he came to the US to pursue a career in cardiology and obtained a master's degrees in clinical epidemiology and completed multiple cardiovascular research fellowships at prestigious institutions like Harvard Medical School, the Brigham and Women's Hospital, and the Mount Sinai Medical Center. Dr. Lopez-Jimenez then completed his cardiovascular medicine fellowship at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, to then move to a fellowship in preventive cardiology at the Boston Veterans Affairs Medical Center. For his contributions to medicine and science, Dr. Lopez-Jimenez has received numerous recognitions like the Mayo Excellence Through Teamwork Award as Director of the Quality Improvement Initiative for Patients with Heart Failure. The research program of Dr. Lopez-Jimenez studies obesity and cardiovascular disease from different angles, from physiologic studies, assessing changes in myocardial mechanics and structural hemodynamic changes following weight loss, to studies addressing the effect of physicians' diagnosis of obesity on willingness to lose weight and successful weight loss at follow-up. His research projects include the significance of body adiposity to cardiovascular risk, limitations of body mass index in clinical practice, and the national trends in cardiovascular risk, among others. For this, Dr. Lopez-Jimenez has numerous publications and holds an H index of 68. Dr. Lopez, we're very excited for your talk this morning, and we will be sending this plaque to extend our gratitude for your time and your talk. Welcome.
And Francisco, thank you, welcome. Thank you for being here with us. As they're setting up your slides, I have, as I told you before, I have Dr. Cooper right here. I'm just gonna ask him to say a few words to welcome you to our morning lecture series. Leslie.
Well, for those who don't know Francisco, he's a wonderful colleague. For many, many years, we worked together in the Gonda building, and before the Gonda building was built in Rochester. He runs both the leader worldwide in obesity and heart disease, but also in general the executive cardiovascular program up on the 5th floor of Gonda, as well as being deeply involved in cardiopulmonary stress testing with Tom Allison, Ray Squires, and others. So Francisco, welcome. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Alfredo. Well, thank you for the very nice and kind introduction. This is really a pleasure and a big honor to be here this morning. Let me just start with the sharing of the slides. Let me see. Please tell me if you see the presentation mode. Is that what you see?
We see it in the computer, but here in the room, they're setting it up right there, but we can see it in the computer, already. So I think that oral virtual participants are able to see it, but it's coming up. Keep going, please. Thank you, Francisco. We see it now.
Okay, thank you. Well, in the following about 25, 30 minutes, I will tell you pretty much it's gonna be a description of our journey over the last 5 to 6 years as we implemented the AI program in cardiology. Back in the times, there was not such a thing as AI in clinical medicine at Mayo Clinic, pretty much, except for few areas in radiology doing some AI. Here are my disclosures. So the presentation is divided basically in those two pockets, a description of where we are and basically how we got here. So the electrocardiogram, as all of you know, even though you're in a different field, is an extremely old technology, 125 years old technology that hasn't really changed much. The electrocardiograms are the same. The way we interpret the electrocardiograms hasn't changed for all this time, the same principles, same nomenclature. Everything has been pretty much the same, with very few advances over the last 40 years in terms of the diagnostic performance. However, one of our colleagues, Saki Atia, who is a PhD in computer sciences, was visiting Mayo Clinic cardiology, and he was wondering, well, you know, why do you think this way or that way? He was seeing medicine from the engineer's angle, and one of the questions he asked was, well, why don't you process all this data to see if the computer can tell you something else? So from that point on, basically we start this journey trying to determine if the electrocardiogram with the use of computers will tell us things beyond what a human brain can see. And this has been basically the main paradigm shift we start right here. So the very first project we started was trying to determine if the electrocardiogram will detect low ejection fraction. We know that the electrocardiogram changes a bit when the pumping function of the heart is weak, but not to the point to make this a diagnostic tool to diagnose low ejection fraction. So we put together data on about 300,000 pairs of ECGs and echocardiograms, and we trained the computer with probably half of those cases to identify a low ejection fraction. And the results were very, very good. We're beyond our comprehension, because the area under the curve, as you can see right here, was 0.93. And for those not very familiar with the performance of many medical tests outside neurosurgery, for example, the PSA to detect prostate cancer, the area under the curve is in the 0.75. Stress test that we do every day goes in the 0.78, 0.8, and so forth and so on. Most of the medical diagnostic tools we have will have an area under the curve of around 0.8 if it is good, 0.85 if it is really amazing. So we have to replicate this like 3 or 4 times before we will even try to submit this for publication, because we didn't want to have the shame to retract a paper that, by the way, it was too good to be true. But you know, every single replication study was basically the same results. and then from that point on, as it is the problem with AI, the main quest was to replicate those findings in other populations, because this was just using data from Mayo Clinic Rochester, and you know, data results were good, but was it good to be applicable in other populations? So from that point on, we embarked in this journey of validating this in many different clinical settings, many different populations. So first was to apply this in the general population, and it actually showed very good results. Then we did a validation study that was done in a much larger population. We did this in an intensive care unit as well. We proved that it was actually good to detect low ejection fraction in pregnant women or just post-delivery. To detect low ejection fraction in Chagas disease, this was a collaboration with some colleagues from Brazil. We proved that the model was able to detect low ejection fraction in COVID, and we got an FDA exception to use this tool during the COVID pandemic. Then we tried to replicate the results, showing that there was no bias by detecting low ejection fraction in African Americans, Hispanics, Asians as good as it did in whites, and the performance was basically identical across all those race or other groups. We also showed that the tool was good to detect a low ejection fraction among those receiving chemotherapy, that some of those chemotherapy agents, as you know, cause low ejection fraction. Then trying to show that the applicability of this to the community in African Americans was good and will change clinical practice. And one of the most recent studies, we published this a few months ago, was to show that we were able to detect low ejection fraction with the use of the iWatch signal by cross-training the signal of the iWatch with the regular electrocardiogram. And finally, to show that this was good when implemented in primary care, and for this, we did a randomized trial where we basically tested the effect of using the algorithm versus standard of care, and demonstrated that when people use the algorithm, actually the accuracy of the detection goes up without increasing the use of echocardiograms. So basically, with implementation of this algorithm, what happens is that people start getting echoes in patients who need it the most. So the number of echoes, again, didn't change or was not different between the intervention group and the control group, but the yield to detect a low ejection fraction actually increased. Now, one of the most exciting things that we found as we were doing this analysis was the detection of age and sex using the electrocardiogram. And let me just briefly explain you how this happened, because this issue really got a lot of attention in the scientific community in cardiology. So as we were reviewing the results of the low EF algorithm, we saw those, the amazing results. So the next thing I asked Saki Atia, the engineer, was, well, I assume that you already incorporated age and sex in the model, right? And then he answered, well, no, I haven't. So I said, you know what, if you include age and sex, I think the performance is going to just go up to the roof, because those are critical determinants of, to predict low ejection fraction along with other clinical information. So he came back the next day a little bit disappointed because the result didn't change at all. The area under the curve was identical. And at that moment, we just had a pause of silence, and then we say, aha, what that means is that the computer knows the age and the sex, because if the model doesn't change at all when you incorporate those two parameters, it means that the computer knows already that. So sure enough, Saki, for the next 2 days, was experimenting and trying to demonstrate that the computer could predict age and sex. And the results were what you see right here, that the prediction of sex was actually outstanding, an area under the curve of 0.97. So better prediction of sex than what you can probably do if you are walking around the mall. But the prediction of age was not necessarily perfect, was good, but not that good. Correlation coefficient of 0.75, so it was good, but not necessarily outstanding. So at that point, another member of our team was seeing those results, and he asked this very critical question: what if this error that we see in the prediction of age represents something the computer is seeing, meaning that what we see as error is actually the computer detecting something else? So what we did after that was to demonstrate that those who have a big or a high age gap, meaning that the computer will say, oh, you are old, but the person is actually 45 years of age or 35, and the computer is saying that you are 60, we were able to demonstrate that those with a positive gap will actually die much sooner than those with no gap. And those with a negative gap, where the computer will say you are younger than what your age is, they will actually live longer than those with no gap. So that was another landmark finding. And from this, I can tell you that there are about 20 different groups publishing on this area of prediction of age as a measure of biological age. Well, let me just briefly show you some of the other areas where this group has been getting into. One is the prediction of the detection of cardiac amyloidosis. It's a condition that is supposed to be rare, but it turns out that it's not as rare as we thought. The detection of a long QT when the electrocardiogram shows a completely normal QT is one of those conditions that cause or predispose to sudden death. And it's important to capture those patients early on. But the problem is that most of those patients actually don't present clinically with a long QT in the electrocardiogram. But this algorithm can detect a long QT even when the QT in the electrocardiogram is completely normal. We can detect hypertrophic cardiomyopathy with fair amount of accuracy, as well as hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in younger individuals, which is one of the main causes of sudden cardiac death among the athletes. Using the electrocardiogram to detect aortic stenosis, the performance of our model was remarkably good. So we believe that you can actually screen patients for the most common valvular conditions with the electrocardiogram, and this is really a paradigm change as well. Another study trying to demonstrate that those algorithms were free of bias or that had minimal bias in it. Now, we got a group of investigators from the GI, from the Division of Gastroenterology and Hepatology, and they came saying, well, you know, can we detect something outside the heart? Can you detect liver cirrhosis with the electrocardiogram? So at the beginning, we were not very convinced that this will yield some results, but sure enough, the electrocardiogram was able to detect liver cirrhosis with a high degree of accuracy, probably more than even a full blood panel to detect liver cirrhosis. And the same for Epstein anomaly, which is a very rare genetic structural congenital heart disease. And one of the most recent algorithms was able to detect diastolic dysfunction, and this might actually change the way we screen patients for heart failure, because the diagnosis of heart failure with preserved ejection fraction still relies on the performance of the echocardiogram. But the problem with diastolic dysfunction and many of the things that I found here is that in order to diagnose those conditions, you have to have an echocardiogram. And even though echocardiograms are readily available for all of us, they are not for about half of the population in the US who needs to travel about 100 miles to get an echo, and about 15% of the population need to travel more than 200 miles to get an echocardiogram. And around the world, the echocardiogram is not as readily available as it is here, particularly in low and middle income countries where they have to really travel a lot, or they just don't have the echocardiogram. So all those findings, we believe, and a lot of people believe, that might actually change the way we practice clinical cardiology. Now, the next challenge as we do AI is how to implement this in clinical practice. You develop the algorithms, now what? Well, here what you have is something that is already in Epic at Mayo Clinic. We call the AI dashboard. And this is an area, this is a place in Epic that you can actually see the performance of every single electrocardiogram. This is just one patient and shows you with each little dot represents a single electrocardiogram, and it shows you the performance according to the different models. This is an old picture, but right now we have already 9 algorithms in the AI dashboard, and shows you the electrocardiogram and the performance according to the algorithms. What you might see if you explore this dashboard, you will notice how in some of those dots representing a significant abnormality for a particular condition, you might see actually that the electrocardiogram might look actually completely normal. And this is something that is a big puzzle for electrophysiologists, because they say, how come an electrocardiogram that looks completely normal can actually represent a condition that it wasn't even meant to be detected by the electrocardiogram. Again, this is available, and you can access, there is a little tab when you are in the cardiology tab, there is a little tab that says AI dashboard. You click on that and it will show you all the electrocardiograms and the performance according to the different algorithms. There is one algorithm that I didn't mention that has gotten a lot of attention in the community, is the algorithm to detect atrial fibrillation. And this is very relevant for neurologists. We are partnering with neurology, Mayo Clinic Rochester as well, because it seems like the electrocardiogram can detect atrial fibrillation even when the electrocardiogram is in normal sinus rhythm. And how it does it, we don't understand how, but the accuracy is remarkably good. And we are doing additional experiments. For example, we just completed a project with Dr. Brown, the chair of neurology at Mayo Clinic Rochester, demonstrating that individuals with history of a stroke who have a positive algorithm for atrial fibrillation, but not known atrial fibrillation, they have never been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, are way more likely to have a recurrent stroke than individuals where the algorithm was completely normal. We believe that the future of all those algorithms relies on the use of either pocket devices or handheld devices or other tools that are even more rarely accessible to people than the regular electrocardiogram. And for this, as I showed you before, we have at least demonstrated in 2 or 3 experiments that the performance can be as good as it is with the regular electrocardiogram. We were very proud when the European Society of Cardiology sent us a letter saying, well, we really like what you do. And this new journal, which is the Journal of Digital Health, published by the European Society of Cardiology, shows Mayo Clinic, the Mayo Clinic Cardiology AI group as the first center of digital excellence that they selected. So, but of course, something like that is a teamwork, as you have very elegantly shown how a team, makes things really amazing. So this is a portion of our team. Here is Peter Nosworthy, Ricky Carter from Florida. I mean, we have a few people from Florida, from Arizona, several of our engineers, just to show you some of those. Now, so the main question here, which is really the core of the topic, not just to show you what we have done, is, how did we get here? Because this is something that I'm pretty sure can be taken by any group, anywhere, not necessarily those in cardiology, because those principles really apply to many of the things that we are doing. So at the very beginning was 2017. So we were like, what is AI? I mean, we don't know what is AI. Obviously, AI has been around for much longer than that, but it wasn't really something done in medicine. But as we saw the very first results, we saw an opportunity here. We said, well, we are getting those results and we have all this data. And then we extended that to 1 million electrocardiograms with echo results. So we saw an opportunity to do more, to just not just do one single study. And at that point, the decision was made to grow, to make this a group that will be doing AI and applications of AI. And as you heard when I was presented, well, my true area of research hasn't been AI. I mean, my whole career has been mostly on the complex relationship between obesity and cardiovascular disease. So getting this shift was something that I wasn't anticipating, but sometimes changes happen, and it's not that I left my other area of research. It's just that when you see an opportunity and you are somehow mid-career or senior in your career, you have the opportunity. You just do what you need to do to advance the science. But at that point, the main question was, now what? Okay, we want to create an AI in cardiology group. How do we do it? So we had 2 options at that point. We basically had the option to do this in ways how many medical programs, clinical programs go, which is, let's just get together and do it, and things will just happen. Or let's try to take a different approach, more like an strategy approach, a strategic approach, as if you were creating an enterprise. So the first thing we did was creating a vision. So a vision is essentially creating a grandiose statement, as you might see for the vision of companies and industries. It sounds usually as a grandiose statement, but it's basically how you would like to see yourself in the next 10 years or 15 years. And that goes along with the mission, which is another very important question. And the mission represents the why. Why do you exist? Why will this group exist? After all, it's not just to advance your career. It's not just to make you publish more articles. You know, what is really the ultimate goal for you? And for us, it was very clear. It was to bring solutions to patients that will help them to be better, to live longer, and to have more accurate diagnosis in cardiology. Again, the question was, you know, how do we create this strategy? So the way to achieve the mission and the vision is by designing a strategy. This is what, you know, those in the business world will tell you. And from that point on, we set up a brainstorming session, and then we had a retreat where we invited pretty much everybody in cardiology who was willing to participate. We were very open and had been very open from the very beginning. We invited everybody willing to share ideas, to discuss this, to this retreat. And we had a pretty good attendance to that retreat. That was about 4 years ago. And at that point, our main goal was to determine what were the next steps to make this group larger and to make the group more productive and to make the group more impactful. So we start by hiring engineers and getting money from the institution, getting money from research grants to advance the agenda. We defined what the midterm needs were. We decided that we needed to brand ourselves better because that will allow us to collaborate around the world and not just internally at Mayo Clinic. And as I mentioned before, to create an organizational structure, which is what you see in this slide. For that, we decided that it was very important to develop the governance of the group. That wasn't necessarily just research, but wasn't necessarily just innovation. So it was a combination of both. The group decided to have 2 co-leaders, myself and also Saki Atia, the engineer, and then to have the domain experts who may not be necessarily, clinical experts in AI, but clinical experts in a particular clinical area who will be helping us with the algorithms. We also decided to increase the interest in AI in our divisions and in our Department of Cardiology. So we start this distribution list for everyone who would like to hear more about AI in cardiology. And now we have about 170 people in this distribution list. We have a monthly AI seminar, an internal web page. We have the journal club on AI in cardiology. And then we organically started creating the groups of AI in each one of the different areas. We start with the cath lab, with the echo lab, and so forth and so on. We continue with educational activities, AI topics in grand rounds. We put together the first ever CME program of AI in cardiology that we are aware of in the US, and start writing papers, review papers, so people will be more aware of what was going on in this field a few years ago. YouTube videos, Medscape sessions. And it's very interesting because as I was seeing since I joined this session, all the things that you are doing, which is very amazing, it reminds me a lot what we kind of start doing. So you are way advanced in all those things, Dr. Quiñones. So, but anyway, so we decided that expanding the educational opportunities was key. So that's when we created this CME program. And this was a very interesting CME program in San Francisco, because different than the standard CME programs where you just go and get the lectures and questions and answers. In this particular CME program, what was very exciting was actually more than the lectures were the breakout, kind of the coffee breaks. And the reason was because during those coffee breaks and during the lunch time, you will see engineers, clinicians, investors, people from the industry, all talking together in the hallway, talking about ideas, talking about, what will be the next big thing. And it was very exciting because I have never seen that before in cardiology, where you have engineers, clinicians, people in the industry, all talking at the same time about what might be the very big next thing. We created the internship program, and this was very interesting because we had a lot of applicants. We selected a few, and this has been going on every year since then. Now, a key question we had was how to sustain something like this, how to sustain this program that at the beginning is exciting. You get the money more easily at the beginning, but it is not sustainable if we don't create a financial pathway for that. So for the question is this something about research, or is this something that clinical dollars need to support? And the reality is that right now it is being supported by a combination of clinical dollars, research, grants, internal and external funding. And as you can imagine, it's a very expensive program with 8 engineers and the whole apparatus of managers and administrators, but it has been a nice experience. We have about 90 disclosures, about 25 patent applications over the last 4 years. We have had 2 have been granted already, and we are looking forward for more patents to be granted. About 12 license ideas with industry, and that's creating some revenue streams that is going to sustain the research and the innovation program. But what is critical in something like this, and this is very relevant for all of you doing research, is it is okay to have the innovation mindset sometimes in a way that we as clinicians or clinical investigators might see as heresy. And that is to ask ourselves if your idea has any commercial value. There is nothing wrong with that. It's actually good to ask ourselves, because if we invent something that is clinically useful, that is going to help patients around the world, that thing has commercial value. And that is okay to put a potential monetary value on something, not because you want to be rich, but it's just a way to gauge the relevance of your invention. And it's also because it's through those revenue sources that you can actually grow your research program, and you can invent the next big thing. So it's perfectly okay. And I am insisting on that because I can tell you how many times we get resistance from clinicians saying, "Oh, I'm not here for the money. I'm not interested about any finance." That's okay, but but if what you invent has no commercial value, it's not that it's not relevant, but it's something that might take much longer to be finally implemented in clinical practice. But if you believe it's something ready to be implemented, it does have some commercial value. And if that is the case, you have to file a disclosure. And you have to start talking to Mayo Ventures, because there may be some intellectual property rights that you can secure, and you might eventually be able to commercialize the idea. We created this startup with another IT, with an IT company from Boston, and the name is Anumana, that has dollars from the other entity plus Mayo Clinic. And that company has been essentially in charge of commercializing all the algorithms, well, not all, but at least 12 of the algorithms we have at different stages of regulatory pathways. We are hopefully very close to get the first full FDA approval for the low EF algorithm. And when that happens, that's going to really change many things we do with the use of ECG. So just in summary, the initiation of an AI group may come by chance, good luck, by intention, but to go from there to develop the program definitely requires an intention, requires a design, requires a strategy, and in my opinion, it's better to treat it as a company, as an enterprise, where you define your mission, your vision, and you define the strategy in how to get there. It has to be sustainable, because otherwise, no matter how great ideas are, the program will die. And we should not feel afraid of questioning the monetary value of our ideas, because that might actually help us to extend and expand any innovation we can come up for the rest of our lives. And this is the end of the talk. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Amazing talk, Francisco. And I see already Dr. Nantmeyer here with wanting to get the microphone. So if we can pass the microphone around. There's another microphone right there, Eric. You can see, and then we're going to monitor the questions online as well. So Dr. Nantmeyer, take it away.
Francisco, excellent talk. You know, there's a lot of talk from Congress about limiting AI and putting some boundaries on that. What's your opinion on that? How do you think it'll affect medicine?
Yeah, I mean, certainly AI got us by surprise. AI is advancing so fast that we started implementing AI without necessarily being careful about the potential dangers of AI. So I do agree that it's important to regulate, to have some boundaries, and to be sure that everything is done in the right way. I do believe as well that there are some misperceptions about AI, that AI is going to take over the humankind, and the whole earth, and is going to control us, and is going to kill all of us. I don't think that's going to be the case. However, AI is a powerful tool, and similar to nuclear energy, it has to be controlled. It can give us a lot of great things, but it might be actually dangerous if it is not done in the right way. My main concern regarding regulatory issues is that we need to be extremely careful before we implement something in clinical practice, because right now we see a lot of companies selling you snake oil, telling you that what they have is amazing. Well, show me the numbers, show me the publications. They have to have the FDA approval, but not just that. They have to show you that they really change clinical practice, because otherwise implementing those things without being vetted completely could be actually very dangerous. At the same time, the regulatory processes we have are so slow. It takes about 3 years, for example, or 5 years to get a medication approved. AI cannot follow that slow pace of approval. We have to have systems that are more agile, that can review things and approve in a relatively shorter time, because AI is advancing very quickly.
Thank you, Francisco. And we have to follow up on this issue of the concerns, of course, at a national, international level, and at the same time temper that with the opportunities and possibilities. You stated very nicely your mission, your vision. If you were to get some of these principles, I see a lot of conversations right here in the chat, text messages. Sanjit is thinking, can we do the same for epilepsy, for some of the other neurological diseases? If you were to impart to our audience, in neurology, neurosurgery, the neurosciences, 2 or 3 principles of where to start, I think that the institution is already investing a few $1 million in seed money requests and applications and things like that. And it seems to me that the organization has a lot of desire to invest much more in the years to come in this space of artificial intelligence to benefit healthcare. But what would be your advice for these young doctors right here, and where to start in their own fields?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think it's a combination of 2 things that seem contradictory, but to me, that's part of the secret to achieve that. One is to have a very good idea what is your destination, what is really your final goal. Where do you want to be 5 years from now? And that is, it's okay to dream, it's okay to think big, because that's the only way you can, you can find new lands. When you go and try to reach the stars, you might never reach the stars, but you might actually end up in new areas that you never imagined you would be at. But at the same time, and this is why I call this slightly contradictory, that you have to start small. You have to define the very next, what is the very next mark, what is the very next goal that is going to be small in magnitude compared to your final vision, but essentially you will go step by step. The second thing is that you have to have a good team. From the very beginning, you have to choose the right people. And the right people might not be necessarily those who have important positions, but will be those who share your vision, those who share your ambition to achieve that goal. But the team has to be complementary, and you will have to be working with people that think entirely different than you, people who work very different than you, and that's what makes good teams amazing. When you get to work with people that have complementary skills, not just people that do things exactly the way you do things, right? So to me, those are the main steps, Alfredo. So I think it's very important to know where you go to establish a roadmap. So that's your goal. How do you want to get there? How do you plan to get there? And again, from the very beginning, you have to think about how to become sustainable. And getting seed money is great, but seed money dries out very quickly, much quicker than you imagine. So you have to start applying for grants from the very beginning. You have to start thinking about how to make this idea or this group sustainable for the long term.
It seems to me that you have to dream big, but you have to start planting a seed small and then build towards that. I have Ana Carrano, who's one of our faculty, asking a question, and then I'm going to pivot here in the audience with Dr. Miller. Ana, go ahead, please.
Thank you for the very inspiring talk. My brain is exploding with ideas right now. So my question is that, can we do this reliably with wearables? Or if the answer is no, how far are we from being able to do this with an Apple Watch without the need to get an ECG?
Yes, Anna, this is a very important question. We believe that we might achieve a very comparable level of accuracy for some of the algorithms. And we have shown that in that publication for the low EF, that the accuracy, the area under the curve using the Apple Watch to detect a low left ventricular ejection fraction was about 0.86 compared to the 0.93. So pretty good. I believe that there is going to be room for both. One is to develop and to improve the accuracy of the algorithms using point of care, as we call point of care devices, wearables, or some things that you get in the pocket and you can just hold with your hands. Because if you think about it, for example, my dream is to be able to detect an acute heart attack with something like that, right? So a patient is having some chest pain, gets that, and the thing is telling the patient, go to the ED because you very likely are having a heart attack right now, things like that. Mm-hmm. But there is also future on how can we make the electrocardiogram, the standard electrocardiogram, 12 leads, more accessible to people. And we are experimenting doing this hospital at home principle where you actually ship the machine to the patient. And there are some companies that are creating vests, so the patient doesn't have to worry about, is the electrode in the right location. They just put a strip on the chest, bloop, or they just wear a vest. There is a company, for example, that is focusing on ECGs for women, that is creating making some bras that have the electrodes already included in the bra. And I can think about women with breast cancer treatment, for example, that might develop low ejection fraction or heart issues, using that bra constantly and transmitting that information to a center that will process the signal. So I think there is room for both the testing how to make those wearables as accurate as possible and getting a level of accuracy that is as good as the regular electrocardiogram, and also getting the full signal, because there may be some conditions that might require the full signal in some situations.
Thank you, Francisco.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Ana. I'm going to pivot now to Dr. Miller here, and then I'm going to go to Justina. So we're going to try to keep the questions short, but I wanted to thank you. I know you're a few hours earlier than we are, and you can see in the audience, we still have it over 60 people on video and Zoom, plus a full room right here. I'm going to come to Dr. Miller right here.
Yes, thank you very much. Fascinating talk. So we know to a certain extent that AI, like any other computer program, is somewhat, what we get out is a little bit determined by what you put in. We've seen with the, people who put in different things for different political things get different answers out. Do you, obviously some kind of standard, right now it seems like it's going to be a little bit, at least in the early days, a little like the Wild West that the internet was in its early days. Do you see that we can, through the rigors of our, just the same as we do with other scientific things in our publications and stuff, can we create a standard for which we can use it, or do we have to, is there anything out there, do we have to, is there going to be a whole nother level of what standard that has to be met by AI to make it acceptable to somehow regulate this?
Well, I think that's another $1 million question. For example, I think the classic example has been the ChatGPT, right? How ChatGPT can come up with, amazing responses, but can also make up things, and you don't know the difference, right? So who's going to be the jury out there to tell you when those so-called large language models are telling you the truth, and where they are just making up stuff? Well, I don't know. I don't know the real answer for that. I do believe that this is getting us into complex areas where we still need to figure it out how to do that well. I have to say, for example, that when ChatGPT came out, there were two types of people. Well, three types. The third type is the type that was completely ignoring ChatGPT, and the other two were those that were paying attention, but one was just being amazed by the wealth of responses that you can get. That is just hard to believe how quickly you can get those responses. And the other group was a group of individuals who were like, gosh, this is bad. Don't even think about this, and don't even think about getting this in medicine, because that will be bad. Okay, the reality is that there are many publications showing how ChatGPT can actually come up as a very good tool for clinicians, a very good tool for patients. And to prove that, Mayo Clinic, as you probably know, is right now in the process of vetting tools that might be used clinically for both clinicians and for patients that will use exactly the same principles as ChatGPT. Now, of course, there gotta be a jury out there who needs to determine when those things are not accurate, when those things are going too far off. But the reality is that happens also in medicine. So if you open, you open Twitter, and you will see a lot of MDs who are telling a bunch of lies. Who is out there to tell you, hey, that's a lie? And we saw that in COVID. So I think that one of the main challenges in the postmodern era is telling the truth and knowing what is true and what is false. And it's not just an issue for AI. I think it's an issue for the humankind, that we are right now having a trouble recognizing what is true and what is not. So I hope that as we move forward as humanity, that we focus more on valuing truth more than anything else. And for AI, that gotta be one of the main priorities.
Thank you, Francisco. I'm going to go to Justina, who's joining us from London, who's a PhD, a graduate student going to medical school now. Stellar, doing artificial intelligence and imaging and language models and things like that. But before that, the other day at the level of the board, we were talking about there may be an opportunity for us to even invent new AI to understand whether AI is accurate or not. So AI on top of AI, but the AI that we're going to create is called our brains, because nothing is more accurate than that. So Justina, joining us from London, take it away, please. And then I'm going to come here to the last question by JP Almeida. Go ahead, Justina.
Thank you very much, Dr. Q. And great talk, Dr. Lopez. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the challenges that you've had to overcome when setting up the group. So specifically, anything related to the use of patient data, and a little bit more about the timeline of how long it took you to set everything up get approvals? That would be really helpful.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we had a number of challenges. Obviously, yeah, I present just the nice results and everything, but there were a number of challenges, and some of the challenges relate to the access of data and to be able to curate the data. I think one of the main challenges in AI is to use the right data and to be sure that the data is accurate enough, because big data is not the same as good data. And there was this lie, I will say, for a number of years, that too much focus on big data when it was really trashy data, and that doesn't necessarily give you better results. So being sure that the data were clean, accurate, that the labels were good, and that the question was the right question. One of the main challenges in AI we found, and you will see that for those who are doing AI or trying to do AI, is that there is a huge divide between the engineers who are the super experts in computer sciences and the clinicians, right? So we need to build bridges to better understand each other. They can come up with the most amazing solutions to the most irrelevant questions a clinician could have, right? So they need to know what you need. But what is very important for us is to break the paradigms we follow. For example, in cardiology, we try to predict heart attacks, and we follow the paradigm of Framingham, which is predicting heart attacks in 10 years. Well, the engineers ask you, why 10 years? Don't you want to know who's going to have a heart attack next year? And we're like, oh, that's true. Well, we just follow paradigms because we have been doing this for years. So breaking up paradigms is another challenge. And the timeline, well, this has been going on for 6 years already. And at the beginning, there was a lot of excitement, and everybody wanted to do AI. Then once you show them what it requires for, once the fellow sees what they need to do to get a project completed, you start getting people, fading away. And I was, Alfredo, I was thinking about this strategy as I got this invitation to present this at 6 a.m., 5:45 a.m. Rochester, was that I don't do this anymore, but I used to do this early on, that, I had those residents coming to me, hey, Dr. Lopez, I want to do some research with you. Oh, sure. So let's meet tomorrow at 6 in the morning. I wait for you in my office. But tomorrow is Saturday. Yeah, but, we are working today. So, if we want time to discuss, let's meet tomorrow at 6 a.m. Saturday. I will say that only 1 out of 10 people who wanted to do research show up on a Saturday morning at 6 a.m. And I don't want to promote, imbalance in work life, but to me, it was kind of a filter to, So people need to understand that, AI is not any easier than regular research. It's tough. You get some frustrations and some challenges.
Yeah, congratulations, beautiful talk João Paulo made in here. I have actually 2 questions. Number one is about the issue of sustainability. When you mentioned that the funds currently go through research, but also through clinical practice, my question would be how at this time you have been, been able to capture funds by the clinical practice. And the question number 2 is about, the issue of, how do you work with your algorithms right now in the IP? So at which point, because one of the big challenges with papers coming from AI is often, they're exciting, as you mentioned, but we still have the issue of the black box results, and we still got the issue of algorithms being published for validation for secondary groups and so on and so forth. So how is your strategy regarding that aspect is my second question.
Sure. Well, the 2 related questions. So one is about the sustainability. So it's important to know, for example, that the NIH is slowly catching up, but it's catching up. So 3 years ago, they will basically reject every single application right off the bat. I mean, you will not get any dollar from the NIH for that. Now they are changing slowly, and that's good, but it's still challenging. You have to make a case to the institution to get some funding, but at the same time, you have to start exploring with the industry to see if there is any industry any company out there willing to partner and willing to fund some of the ideas, okay? Getting IP is extremely important. The intellectual property is not easy to be secure in AI because the US Patent Office is not very familiar with how to grant intellectual property to an idea that can be replicated tomorrow in a slightly different way. But the most important thing for any idea in AI is to be replicated. It has to be replicated in a different population. Only 20% of the algorithms in AI can actually be replicated. And that's a tragedy of validity, right? Because 80% basically are just trash that nobody can replicate. So the algorithm needs to be replicated, and that's why establishing partnerships with other institutions within the US, other institutions outside the US is very important. The FDA will not approve a single algorithm unless it has been validated in 3 different populations. And those populations need to be different geographically, need to be different ethnically, and need to be different slightly in the clinical setting. So that's critical for an algorithm to be approved. Interestingly, the FDA ignores any validation outside the US. I don't know why, but that's the reality for us. So it is challenging, but it's doable. But you have to focus from the very beginning to start thinking about, okay, this sounds like a great idea. Who will be my partners outside Mayo Clinic to validate this algorithm?
Francisco, thank you. First of all, I got a comment from Dr. Paola Mead, who's also a graduate from Anáhuac, saying that 6 a.m. is a Mexican thing on a Saturday and Sunday, And second, your plaque is coming your way. You saw it on the screen, a beautiful plaque that the fellows here and our residents and our faculty made for you. And I just want to thank you personally for dedicating your morning to us so we can learn from you, so we can change the world together, so we can build bridges. It is amazing what you're doing. It's inspirational. You saw the comments and people from all over the world coming in and joining us. We are very, very honored to have you. I know you're going to dedicate the morning to meet the residents, some of the fellows, some of the faculty, and I wrap it up with you in a couple of hours. So I think your next meeting is at 8:20, so you have about 5 minutes to grab a cup of coffee, maybe use the restroom quickly or something, but we thank you immensely, Francisco. This is a beautiful treat to us. We saw an amazing talk that it got recorded, and I think people understand the value. You saw everybody staying online as well. So we just are witnessing history, the making of history through these disciplines, and you are leading the way. You're the tip of the spear, making a space for the rest of us to follow your steps. So thank you from the bottom of our heart, and we look forward to seeing you in person. You saw the Mayo Clinic, Florida. Our goal is hopefully to move you here.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day, and we'll see you shortly. Thanks, everybody, for being here with us. Thanks.
Oh.